here, presenting how to fix your flat tire with a patch kit. Step 1, remove tire from wheel. Remember, you've got this little valve thing here, and you need to let out all the air first before you take the tire off. So now there's no more air in the tire, and I want to start opposite of the valve, because you'll get the most leverage that way. So I usually use 2 tire levers to do this. You stick the first one in, and then the second, pull them down at the same time. These little hooky things on the other end of the tire levers are used to attach onto the spokes, like that. From here, usually you can just whip one all the way around. Alright, so now I've got one side of my bead all the way off. Now I can just pull it the rest of the way off. Sometimes that second side of the bead can be a bit challenging as well, and so you'll just do the same thing you did with the first side of the bead again. Alright, so now we've got our tire and our tube. Okay, now we're on to step 2. Where is the hole in your tube? To find it, you can use a pump, and here for where the hole is. And if you can't hear it, you can always kind of like lick your lips and move them around the tube, and sometimes you can find it that way. So I've located the hole. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a Sharpie, and I'm going to make about a 1/4 size mark over the hole with an X and a circle. And this way I know how much area of my tube to cover with glue before I apply the patch. Before I patch it, I want to once again let out all the air, so I'm patching onto a flat surface. Alright, so there that is. Now, inside your little patch kit, you'll get a couple different things, including sandpaper, glue, and patches. So, first things first, I'm going to take some sandpaper, and I'm just going to lightly sand off the tube. I do this so when I go to put on the patch, I'm not sticking a smooth surface onto another smooth surface. Take your vulcanizing fluid. Yours will look a little bit more like this, be in a little tube. And I'm going to cover that entire area that I previously marked with a Sharpie. Now, it's really important to get the right amount of glue. You don't want it totally drenched, but you also want to make sure that you apply enough so that your patch will actually stick. So, I'll say that's the appropriate amount of glue right there. And you see how shiny it is right now? We're actually going to wait a couple minutes until that shine basically goes away. Here with the glue update. Our glue is nice and dull now, so it's time to apply our patch. When applying said patch, make sure that you don't actually touch the patch part with your fingers. You don't want that grease from your hands getting onto the patch. So I'm just going to peel it away from the tin foil here. And place said patch onto my inner tube. From here, we're gonna allow friction to do the rest of the work. For about 5 minutes, you wanna be rubbing this patch onto your tube to make sure you get the best seal as possible. All right, so now it's time to see if my patch held or not. You can see that the cellophane is starting to peel away from the middle. This is a good sign that it's ready to peel off. You don't necessarily have to peel off the cellophane. I just like to because it gives you an idea of how well your patch is going to hold up. All right, now for the moment of truth. I'd say that looks pretty good. None of the sides are coming off. So I'd say that's ready to put back inside of the tire. Step 7 is probably the most important step. It's going to be inspecting our tire and our rim to make sure that we don't get another flat from the same thing that gave us the first one. So the first thing that I like to do is grab a rag or my t-shirt and run it along the inside of my tire, making sure that it's not snagging on anything that could be stuck in the tire. Next, you're going to want to check your rim strick to make sure that's firmly intact, making sure that you can't see any of your spoke nipples when you're looking down onto your rim. Beyond that, you could just quickly glance at your rim, make sure there's no damage to it, and beyond that, you're ready for step 8, which is the reinstallation. So to do this, you just want to have enough air in the tube to give it its form. Put the valve stem where your PSI indicator on your tire is. This way you don't have to search for it later. Now installing the tire back onto the wheel, putting the valve in first, and then doing one side of the bead at a time, so just one side of the tire. If it seems to be getting a little difficult, you can always let out a little bit more air. So now I've got one side of the bead on, I'll switch it around, start at the valve again. Letting out all the air, and voila, tire installed. It's time to reinflate it. What I like to do is inflate the tire maybe to like 20-30 psi, let out the air, and check to make sure the tire's seated. The worst thing that could happen after patching an inner tube is probably inflating your tire to give yourself a pinch flat. So I'm just checking to make sure that there's no tube stuck between the rim and the tire right now. Once that looks good, I'll go ahead and find my pressure indicator on the side of my tire. So for this tire, I don't know if you can read that, but it says inflate to 4 bars, but the number that I want to be looking at is 58 minimum and then 87 psi max. So that's the number that I'm going to inflate it to. Usually they're not quite as arbitrary as that. Usually it's like 100 psi for a road tire, maybe 60 psi if it's a mountain tire. Alright, I'm just going to pull down my Presto washer here, Check to make sure the tire's seated correctly, and voila, you're ready to roll again.